Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G, and joining me tonight is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And yes, we're still in lockdown, but we're taking a look at some of the movies that kind of came out before the lockdown and got some short kind of cinema life, but then are now ended up on streaming services. And tonight we're going to be taking a look at a movie that was actually quite eagerly anticipated by a lot of people earlier this year. It's Melina Matsoukas' movie Queen and Slim, and this movie kind of got a lot of press overseas, and by the time it reached Australia, there was a lot of people who were kind of very, very excited to see it. It basically tells the story about a date from hell. Slim, played by Daniel Kaluuya, goes on a date with Queen, played by Jodie Turner-Smith. Now, on that date, Slim and Queen kind of learn pretty early on that they're not really compatible. But then on the way home, as Slim's driving Queen back to her place, they get pulled over by the police, and a police shooting then occurs, which results in the police officer actually dying, and Queen and Slim are forced to go on the run. During their time on the run, they end up meeting people like Queen's Uncle Earl, played by Bokeem Woodbine, and yeah, it's basically a road movie where these two are trying to outrun the law, even though what the crime that they committed probably would have been able to be defended in court. But we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Now, mate, as I said, this movie was really, really kind of well received in America, and a lot of people were excited to see it. So, what were your thoughts on Queen and Slim?
Yeah, I don't think I really had I don't think I was really as happy with the movie as a lot of other critics have been. I don't know, just the way I say it, like, I think it's like another, like trying to make another kind of movie about racial tensions in America at the moment. And I think it helps when your movie really has something else to say. And it helps when it isn't just the same kind of themes that the movie is tackling over and over again, or if there's something really more to the movie. I don't think this movie really had a lot more else to say, or didn't really come with a story that I thought was really that interesting, despite what a kind of an interesting setup that this was. It's kind of, I mean, I guess the way that a lot of people would describe the movie is kind of like a Black Bonnie and Clyde story. And, like, that's actually how Queen and Slim are described within the movie itself. And, like that said, I think the film's director has taken umbrage with that description. But, honestly, I felt like that's really all the movie was. Just, It was a simple setup that could have been a really interesting springboard for something more interesting after that, but it just approaches it in the most kind of shallow way possible. I thought that the actors within it were quite good. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but yeah, I think that story-wise it kind of was a bit of a letdown for something that could have been a really interesting movie. What did you think of it, David?
Yeah, I was kind of excited about this movie when it was coming out because I'd heard good things from, like, overseas. The movie had done, like, a few festivals and stuff overseas and got really good feedback, and, like, it's picked up 10 awards, like, before this whole shutdown kind of thing happened. So, I kind of was excited to see it, but the one thing that made me excited to see it was one reviewer had described this movie as the kind of movie that that Larry Clark would be making these days. So, and I love Larry Clark's movies like Ken Park, Kids, Bully. Like, Bully's probably in my top 10 films of all time. So I was kind of excited to see it because I was like, okay, this sounds like it's going to be pretty interesting, and I'd seen the trailer for it, and the trailer kind of made it look a bit interesting, but I find that a lot of these movies and television shows these days that use that Larry Clark kind of line, they don't pan out the way that they should. And like the TV series Dare Me, on Netflix, it was the same. That was kind of billed as, oh, it's what would happen if Larry Clark directed Bring It On, and it's like these kind of movies, and TV shows, they start off in that kind of style, like the gritty kind of style that Larry Clark would do, but then they kind of like they run out of steam as the film goes on. Like for me with this movie, I was with this movie probably up until a halfway point, and then it felt like the director put stuff in there kind of just to hammer a point home, and then it ended up with this really, really kind of cliched kind of ending that I really didn't like at all. And like the funny bit is, the movies that I've seen over the past couple of years that are Larry Clark like Jonah Hill's mid-90s and the two movies that Shia LaBeouf made this year, they are the kind of movies that Larry Clark would be making, and those guys don't use that description. It's like it's become like a badge for, you're going to like this movie because it's a little bit alternative, or you're going to like this TV show because it's gritty. But that grittiness, and that only seems to last for a little while before the movie ends up becoming a cliche. And I think I found with Queen and Slim that it's one of those movies where if you go away and start to really think about it, it really starts to fall apart. Like the character of Queen in this movie, she's a lawyer, and so she should know that when this shooting happens at the start of the movie, that if this went to court, it wouldn't hold up. Like, there's so many different reasons, and I know that the movie is trying to make the point that that there's no justice for black people in this kind of situation, but I think in the situation that they are in here, they would have a pretty good case. Like, there would have possibly been body camera on the cop, or at least the camera on his car would have been recording. Like, we all see that footage on cops.
There was in the movie. They show it later on. That,
So people looking at it would have been able to see straight away that they kind of like shot him in self-defense. And it doesn't make any sense to me that like a lawyer would be the one going, oh, we need to run. Like, because she's the one that says we need to run. He's kind of like, I don't really want to. But she says it. It's like, someone described it to me, and I think it's a great description. Her character should almost be like the Scully, like with Mulder and Scully. The character who like wants to go along with the law because that's how she lives, kind of thing. So, little things like that kind of, I found, almost bring this movie undone when you really stop to think about it.
Yeah, like, exactly like I said, like, the movie starts where, she, like, they start off in this date, kind of like a blind date of sorts, and... It's
a Tinder date, isn't it?
Yeah, Tinder date, yeah. But it's something like she has only agreed to go out on this date with him after, like, 2 months or something that he actually asked her to go out on a date. And she's only gone out on a date with him because she's had this really bad day where she's a lawyer and one of her clients has just been given the death sentence. And so it's really like she doesn't want to be alone that night. That's really the only reason. And it's a bad date even before they get pulled over by the cops. And what I thought was an interesting idea, of like, because I was okay with them having like the racist cop, like it being this, like the character being such a simple stereotype, because I think the script would have built upon that. Like, I thought that where they were going to go with it was that Queen actually knew who this cop was, because something that the movie that you're told later on is that this cop had actually already been involved in another unlawful shooting of a black youth, and he got away with it, more or less.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, the way that it it brings that up, and then Slim asks her, "Wait, did you know about that?" And she says, "Oh no." And like you said, it's really the whole like in a way she kind of instigates the confrontation with the cop. Like Slim as being this like polite good man, and kind of gets dragged into this situation between Queen, who's kind of like seems to be in kind of a pissy mood in the first place, kind of a rebellious against authority mood, and this obviously racist cop, and Slim is kind of caught in the middle of it, and in the end he ends up shooting a cop, like in self-defense. I thought that they could have really built on that like premise, like to find out later on that like the Queen did kind of know what was happening. She did know who this cop was, and that she did kind of edge things on to the conclusion that they had, or like you said, the way that she's a lawyer. She should be kind of the brains of the situation. I mean, she kind of is in the movie, but like for them to really, they could have had kind of a twist like towards the later part of the movie where like Queen really realizes how much she's screwed her life up. Like she's gone to school, she's a lawyer, and she's passed the bar and all this stuff, and because of just one night, she's completely screwed her life up. And they could have also done something with Slim, where he's just a good guy in the movie, but they could have maybe had something where in his past he was a bit of a thug who tried to turn his life around, and maybe that's why it made it so easy for him to kill a cop. And kind of they could have turned it around that it was that maybe Slim starts becoming more, he goes from being this good guy to being this more extreme character towards the end of the movie, and Queen going from being this instigator to being somebody that really regrets what's happened. But again, the movie doesn't do any of that. It just becomes kind of a cheesy love story.
Yeah.
As the film goes on, just even I just say, just had the confrontation with that cop been maybe played out differently. Like it was somehow that the two of them were involved, because even just as it happens, Slim is the one that shoots the cop. So why does Queen want to go on the run?
Yeah,
it doesn't really make sense. Had that played out differently, it would have. It's really just the strength, like the way that the entire movie is built on this kind of these two characters on the run, and for this road movie to be built upon this confrontation. But it really does. I mean, it just kind of came down to it was a racist white cop cliche.
Yeah, and I think having the camera, like having it on tape, is what causes that issue, because with The Hate U Give, the power of that movie is that, and I know it's the opposite way around, where a cop shoots a black man and the man's friend witnesses it, and it's her word against the cops. That actually works a lot better because there's no evidence to back up her side of the story, and because like it's a rough neighborhood, people assume that because she's a young black girl that she's with this gangster, like this kid, and like they kind of portray this kid is a gangster. But when you actually, like, as an audience, you know that that's not the truth at all. That this kid was trying to turn his life around, that the girl actually goes to a private school, but it's still her word against the cops, and everyone is believing the cop. The fact that this crime was caught on camera is what kind of makes the whole story fall apart, because they do have that evidence. And I've heard people talk about this movie where they've said, look, even if Queen didn't feel that she could go to the local cops because they are racist and she's frightened that they're going to erase the tape or try to make it look like it was not in self-defense, she would have the connections to go to the FBI. Like, she could have rung the FBI and said, look, I live in a racist town. This is what's happened. There's going to be taped evidence, but we're sure that they're going to wipe it, kind of thing.
It's only the way it's presented in the movie. It's only a few hours afterwards where they run into a character who's actually basically the footage is online.
Yeah,
and it's only a few hours later, so it's like that footage is out there. There's at that point, there's no reason that they other than no, we're not going to get a fair trial. That's all that they had to it.
Yeah, but the thing that I find with this film that I do like is I like the style that it's shot in. I'm really liking this style at the moment that a lot of directors are using, and like I mentioned before, about the movies that Shia LaBeouf was in this year before lockdown, they were shot in a similar kind of style, where they're kind of filmed so that they almost feel natural, but there's a bit of an art house film in that, and I think that's the thing that I get most excited about with this movie now is Milena Matsoukas, the director. Her career, she's been working as a film clip director for nearly 20 years. And she's worked from everybody from Whitney Houston, Beyonce, Katy Perry, Kylie Minogue. Her resume reads the top 40 charts. And the fact that she's been able to come and make this really artistic kind of looking movie, after working on video clips that are top 40 video clips, that to me is the thing that makes me most excited about this film. That and the performances of the actors in this film. This movie is the kind of film that you kind of wondered, will it have got Oscar attention before everything that's happened because of the performances? And it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen an actor or an actress in a movie that's not such a great film still do such a great performance, because I thought Jodie Turner-Smith was really, really good in this film. From an acting point of view, she's not quite the rookie that a lot of people have kind of made out that she is. A lot of the early reviews that I read were kind of making out that, she got plucked out of obscurity and put in this. She's done a lot of television, and I think she's even done a couple of small features, but yeah, for people to say that she was plucked out of obscurity, that's not quite true. She has done a lot of television over the years, but I really liked her performance, and I love Bokeem Woodbine in this as well. His character is so over the top, but I just loved it, and I thought Daniel Kaluuya was really good as well. He's the character that you kind of feel sorry for. I found when I watched this movie that I didn't feel as sorry for Queen as I did for Slim, because she is pretty nasty to him early on, with the way that she treats him. She kind of is putting him down. That scene in the diner early on, she's kind of I wouldn't date a wreck like you kind of thing. And it's I really don't like that in characters. And, but yeah, for me, the most exciting part of this movie is the director. I really want to see where she goes from here. And I thought, Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith were both really, really good with their performances in this.
Yeah, I really like Bokeem Woodbine in this movie too. Me personally, I think he's one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. He can be likable or scary or goofy, or he can play something totally straight and it can be hilarious. And he was my favorite part. He's probably my favorite part of the movie Black Dynamite, the comedy movie, blaxploitation parody movie Black Dynamite. And he's barely in that, but he's one of my favorite parts of it. Just this one scene that he's in. So yeah, I was really excited to see him show up in this movie, and his character's probably the best, the strongest written character in the entire movie.
Yeah.
The one with the most depth. When we're first introduced to him, he's you see him, you think that he's this Mac Daddy pimp kind of character that's going to help Queen and Slim out. But as it goes on, you realize that he's really kind of broken. He's kind of I wouldn't say pathetic, but he is kind of a mess. You know, he's not just this cool dude, this cool character. Like, he's still a very believable character in the movies, and he's one of the only characters in the movie who you really believe has a reason to be helping these two fugitives. Like, I had hoped that the movie would be more like that, where Queen and Slim kind of on the run, and they run throughout their journey, their trip. They run in all these different characters who have different views and different feelings about what they've done, and like different personal opinions on whether they're guilty or not. And you see just a few little parts of that throughout the movie, but really nothing really on the same. Nobody else in the movie is really given the same amount of care with the script or screen time to really develop that Bokeem Woodbine is. Personally, I didn't like. He's maybe even given more time to develop as a character than Queen and Slim themselves.
Yeah.
Within the movie, as you said, like the way that there was some as well. The way that the Queen treats Slim at the beginning, the way that it's like I said, it is a bad date to start with. Like even before it all happens, it is a really bad date. And I thought that was something that I thought was really interesting. The idea that this Bonnie and Clyde type story, that these characters kind of become folk heroes of a sort throughout the movie, and a sign of like standing up against oppression and all that. But for it to not really be true, for them to just actually be two people that they didn't actually have any romantic chemistry whatsoever. They tried having a date, they really didn't hit it off, but then they both got dragged into this crazy situation. They were just trying to survive, you know?
Yeah.
I thought, they really could have played up that idea, the idea that of how people with different views would see these people. They would project their own opinions onto them. They would project their own feelings onto them, like that. Say, like crazy right wing people would see them as bloodthirsty cop killers, and Antifa people would see them as freedom fighters. You know, like something like that. I thought would have been really interesting to play on. But again, the movie didn't really go too far in that direction. In fact, it really does portray them kind of as unironic heroes of a sort.
Yeah, I thought the characters of the shepherds, played by Chloe Sevigny and Flea, were kind of underused as well. Like, you've got two really, really good actors there. Chloe Sevigny is pretty much good in anything that she does. Flea did such a great job in Joel Edgerton's movie last year. I kind of wanted to see them used more, but it kind of like really kind of showed by the second half of this movie that it was going for style over substance. And there's some amazing shots in this film where like the director will deliberately leave a camera mounted on a car and stuff like that to get the shot that she wants. But it just feels like when the story starts to peter out a little bit, that you really start to see that whole the style over substance kind of thing. Like the second half of this movie, all that was keeping me kind of interested was the style that the director was using, because it was a style that I really, really liked. Whereas, just the actual story itself, for the second half of the movie, it felt like they tried to inflate the movie and keep it running. It was almost like when, in car racing terms, when they tell the driver to like shake the car to try and get the remaining fuel to go through and keep it going, because it just, once it kind of left like Uncle Earl's house, it kind of seemed to like fall away. Like you had a character who only spends a couple of hours with Queen and Slim, but that's enough to make him become a rebel on his own, kind of thing. Like, like it almost felt like that storyline needed to be that he needed to spend a few days with them, and then what he does is a reaction to what happens to them. Not just a couple of hours, but it felt like that kind of stuff was just put in there as a way to try and get them to the end. But it's really weird like that. Like this whole film felt like that, because I love this scene where they end up pulling up and going into a bar, and like Queen just wants to have fun, and Slim's like, this is going to get us in trouble again, kind of thing, and they want to leave, but then the whole time that they're in that bar, you find yourself as an audience thinking, is someone going to go and ring the cops and dob on them? Does someone recognize them? And it's just, it has great scenes like that, but then the next like couple of things that happens in the story, you're like, oh great, it's not working again. It just, it really did feel like this movie probably would have been a lot better if they'd kind of like wrapped it up at the 90-minute mark, and made it a shorter film rather than stretching it out to 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I felt the same thing. It definitely, like, it really does feel its length by the end of the movie. Like, for 2 hours and 15 minutes, the characters, the story really just has the characters stopping and starting multiple times throughout their journey. I mean, it's understandable being a road movie. That's kind of what they're going to be doing. But as you say, it's really is a style over substance kind of thing. You can tell that this is a movie directed by a music video director. Yeah. Because there's a lot of montages of them driving interstate while R&B or soul music plays, and then they stop and they have an interaction with somebody who almost without fail will help them, and then they're on the road again. Like the parts where they stop, it's really, every time that they stop, it's almost like they're just stopping so that we can have some dialogue. Because when they're driving, it's just kind of it's just like the same kind of the montage over and over again. It just feels like that they just kept going back to that, and it felt very tiring by the end of the movie. Like, I think the first, it's kind of silly as well, because like over the first night, they stop. They have 3 different meals over the first night. Yeah. Like they're having dinner as a date, and then it's like a few hours later, and it's like, oh my god, we're starving. And it's like, we've got to stop for food, and the reason that is so that they can have an interaction with some more characters. Yeah, and then they get to the Bokeem Woodbine's character, and he fries them up breakfast, and it's like, geez, this is like within 9 hours. This is the 3rd meal that these characters have had, and it just felt like there could be a lot better use of that screen time than what they were doing with it.
I was just going to say, that kind of stuff kind of comes across as like when I was studying to be like a director at film school, and the first couple of movies you make, you have all these great ideas, and you want to kind of like do a tribute to like the directors that you know and love, so you put it all into the script, where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be really awesome if I did like a scene here where nobody talks for 5 minutes, but it might not fit the film, but you're just like, oh no, I want to do that, like I want to show that I can do that. And then the same, like, you'll be doing like a sequence or something, and you'll be like, oh, I want this scene to be like Tarantino, and I want the next scene to be like Tony Scott, and you mix it all in, and then when you watch it back years later, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, none of this fits. Like, it's like a jigsaw puzzle that doesn't quite go together, and it kind of feels like that with this film, that like the director had all these great ideas and maybe deliberately put some, I hate saying this, but maybe deliberately put some scenes in there because she knew the shot that she wanted to get, So she put the scene in there so she could kind of like show what she could do as a director. But yeah, that's just speculating, but that's what it feels like at times.
Yeah, like especially like towards the end of the movie. Like I think we're about. It was about 20 minutes from the end of the film, and as they were starting up the car to go on another musical montage, I just started thinking, well, this movie really should have ended by now. And as you say, it's something that maybe the runtime is a bit long for what little story there is. And like I said, had the film been more ambitious with the story that it was telling, or what the themes that it was trying to get across, rather than, again, just being kind of a quote-unquote the Black Bonnie and Clyde movie, I don't know, maybe the runtime would have been more warranted, and it would have actually, I don't know, it would have used it better. But it felt like kind of a waste of time. As you say, style-wise, it's a visually beautiful movie, and the performances in it are great. But it just on a script level, it doesn't seem to really have anything to say.
Yeah. So I guess the big question is now, what are you going to give this movie out of 5?
I'm going to give this 2.5 out of 5. I did, like I said, I enjoyed watching it. It was, like I said, it was the first half of it was really intriguing. It was just, as you say, once from the point that they leave Bokeem Woodbine, it kind of goes downhill. So, yeah, another reason why I like it. It's even though I don't really like the movie too much, it gives me more reason to like him as an actor. That is like, yeah, that he's like, once the movie kind of gets away from him, it kind of loses steam. So, yeah, but it's going to be 2.5 out of 5 from me.
Yeah, I think for me, I originally gave this 3.5 out of 5 when I wrote my my first review for it, but some things has changed since then. Like, the more I've actually thought about the movie, there's been kind of like more that has made me like want to change a little bit. So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5, and I say that just because in that time since I first saw it, I've been back and revisited mid-90s Jonah Hill's movie. I've also like watched the Peanut Butter Falcon, which is the Shia LaBeouf film that I mentioned before. And those films kind of showed me how you can incorporate that style but actually have it work a lot better. And like I said, my big thing now when I look back at this movie is that big hole in the script of the evidence is there. They don't need to go on the run. There's plenty that she could have done as a lawyer to have protected him. Like, I could have even bought, I think, that storyline more if they'd kind of made it that she was like bored with her life.
Yeah.
And she wanted excitement, so she kind of like tells him, "Oh, we need to go on the run, or we're going to get in trouble." But you don't ever see that kind of thing. It just feels like she panics and says, "Oh, let's go on the run." But they could have got out of it if she'd used her skills as a lawyer. So yeah, I think I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. And what did you give it again?
2.5 out of 5 for me.
So it's
like, even the thing of her being a lawyer, once, like, it's there at the start, and it kind of explains her relationship with her uncle, but then after that, it never really comes up again. It's never, so, yeah, it's just a lot of stuff like that feels like kind of wasted opportunity.
Yeah. So it's 2.5 out of 5 for Queen and Slim from Kyle, and 3 out of 5 from me. We'll be back very, very soon with another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. Go out and have a look for Queen and Slim. It's on a few streaming services at the moment, and it may even get to go back into cinemas when we reopen in Australia. But for now, that's it for this episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we'll be back very, very soon.